The radio crackled with urgent Pashto as gunfire erupted around forward operating base Phoenix. While 30 seasoned soldiers scrambled for cover, one person remained perfectly calm, translating the enemy communications in real time. But Elena Rodriguez wasn't just decoding their words, she was predicting their next move with the precision of a seasoned strategist. What happened next would shatter every assumption about who deserves to fight on the front lines. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena Rodriguez arrived at Forward Operating Base Phoenix before dawn, just as she had every morning for the past 14 months. The Afghan mountains stretched endlessly beyond the perimeter walls, their peaks catching the first hints of sunrise. While the base remained shrouded in pre-dawn darkness, most soldiers wouldn't stumble into the Tactical Operations Center for another 2 hours. But Elena cherished these quiet moments when she could work without the constant reminder that she didn't belong. At 28, Elena possessed a gift that the military desperately needed but rarely valued. She spoke 7 languages fluently, including 3 Afghan dialects that most native speakers struggled with. Her linguistic abilities had earned her a position as senior translator for the 2nd Battalion, 75th Infantry Regiment, but in the eyes of many, she remained invisible, just another support specialist shuffling papers, while real warriors planned missions. The language lab occupied a cramped corner of the main intelligence building, surrounded by humming servers and outdated equipment that the tech specialists had long since abandoned. Elena's workspace consisted of a single desk, 2 monitors, and headphones that had seen better days. From her position, she could hear fragments of conversation from the adjacent planning rooms where officers discussed operations she'd never be invited to join. What those officers didn't know was that Elena spent every spare moment studying far more than languages. Hidden beneath stacks of translation protocols and cultural briefings were advanced tactical manuals, combat medicine guides, and detailed analyses of insurgent strategies. While other support staff relaxed during downtime, Elena absorbed knowledge about small unit tactics, explosive ordnance disposal, and emergency medical procedures. Her fascination with military strategy had begun years before her deployment. Growing up in El Paso, Texas, Elena had watched her older brother prepare for his deployment to Iraq. She'd helped him study maps, memorize radio protocols, and understand the cultural complexities of warfare. When an IED claimed his life during his second tour, Elena channeled her grief into understanding everything he'd never had the chance to learn. The irony wasn't lost on her that the military had recruited her linguistic skills while completely overlooking her strategic mind. During her 18 months at FOB Phoenix, Elena had identified patterns in insurgent communications that intelligence analysts had missed. She'd predicted ambush locations based on dialect variations and tribal affiliations. She'd even prevented 3 separate attacks by recognizing coded language in intercepted transmissions. Yet officially, she remained classified as non-essential personnel. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb entered the talk precisely at 0800, his polished boots announcing his presence before his voice did. Webb commanded Alpha Company, with the rigid authority of someone who'd never questioned whether his assumptions might be wrong. Behind him followed his usual entourage, Captain Jessica Torres, whose disdain for support personnel was legendary, and Staff Sergeant Brandon Clark, Webb's preferred squad leader who seemed to believe that combat effectiveness could be measured solely by physical intimidation. "Rodriguez," Webb called without approaching her station. "We need those intercept translations from yesterday's patrol. Think you can handle basic transcription, or should I find someone more qualified?" Elena looked up from her monitors, maintaining professional composure despite the familiar sting of condescension. "The translations were completed at 0600, sir." Full transcripts are uploaded to the secure server with cultural context notes and threat assessments included. Torres smirked audibly. Threat assessments? Since when do translators make tactical evaluations? Since the translations revealed coordination between two previously unconnected cell groups, Elena replied evenly. The linguistic patterns suggest they're planning a coordinated operation within the next 72 hours, likely targeting the supply convoy route through Spin Boldak district. Webb's expression hardened noticeably. He didn't appreciate being corrected, especially by someone whose job description didn't include strategic analysis. Rodriguez, your job is to translate words, not interpret intentions. Leave tactical assessments to soldiers who understand combat. Elena saved her work and retrieved a folder from her secure filing cabinet. She placed it deliberately on her desk, opening it to reveal detailed maps annotated with communication patterns, tribal territory markers, and predicted insurgent movements. Sir, cross-referencing dialect variations with geographical markers indicates a high probability of coordinated attacks. The evidence suggests. Enough, Webb's voice cut through the operations center like a blade. You're a translator, not an intelligence analyst. You process words, not battlefield intelligence. That's why you're sitting behind that desk, instead of leading patrols with actual soldiers. The talk fell silent except for the steady hum of electronic equipment and distant generator noise. Clark shifted uncomfortably, and even Torres seemed to sense that something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere. Elena closed the folder slowly, her hand steady despite the heat rising in her face. Understood, sir, she said quietly. As Webb and his followers departed, Elena remained seated at her station, staring at the closed folder. Inside were copies of every advanced tactical certification she'd earned through correspondence courses, every combat medicine qualification she'd completed online, and every strategic analysis that had proven accurate over the past year. Also tucked away was something Webb knew nothing about, a letter from Major David Kim, an intelligence officer who'd been quietly observing her work and building a case for her transfer to a specialized reconnaissance unit. Elena had been invisible for 14 months, but invisibility came with unexpected advantages. People didn't notice when you stayed after hours to study classified tactical reports. They didn't question why you volunteered for every cultural immersion program that included combat training components. And they certainly didn't expect you to have developed connections with forward intelligence units who valued analytical thinking over traditional credentials. She reopened her secure terminal and began typing a message to Major Kim. The subject line read, Pattern Analysis Complete. Recommend immediate action on Spin Boldak intelligence. Elena had spent over a year translating other people's words. Soon, she'd have the opportunity to make her own voice heard where it mattered most. 3 days after Elena's confrontation with Lieutenant Colonel Webb, she discovered that her security access had been mysteriously downgraded. Standing at the entrance to the classified intelligence section, she watched her identification card trigger a red denial signal on the electronic scanner. The morning intelligence briefing was scheduled to begin in 5 minutes, and a line of analysts waited behind her as she repeatedly attempted to gain entry with credentials that had worked flawlessly for 14 months. Having difficulties, Rodriguez? Captain Torres appeared beside her, satisfaction evident in her tone. Perhaps you should try the General Administrative Building. You know, where the clerical staff belongs. Elena stepped aside, allowing Torres to demonstrate her own clearance. The door mechanism responded immediately with an affirmative chime. There must be a system malfunction, Elena said calmly. I'll verify with Security Administration. Oh, there's no malfunction, Torres replied, holding the door open while deliberately blocking Elena's path. Lieutenant Colonel Webb implemented revised security protocols yesterday. Apparently, There were concerns about unauthorized personnel accessing sensitive operational data. The intelligence officers waiting behind them exchanged uncomfortable glances. Master Sergeant Kevin O'Brien, a 23-year veteran who had collaborated with Elena on numerous cultural assessments, stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, Specialist Rodriguez maintains clearance for this section. She coordinates all our linguistic intelligence and has access to these briefings under standing protocols." "Sergeant O'Brien," Torres interrupted sharply, "take it up with the Lieutenant Colonel if you have issues with proper security measures. Operational security isn't negotiable." Elena watched Torres disappear into the restricted area, then turned to O'Brien.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"It's fine, Sergeant. I'll resolve this through proper channels." But as Elena walked across the compound toward the administration building, she noticed additional changes that suggested this wasn't merely a bureaucratic oversight. The access codes to the translation archive had been modified overnight. Her regular workstation in the Intelligence Fusion Center had been reassigned to a junior analyst. Her name had been removed from the daily briefing distribution list posted in the main corridor. In the personnel office, Elena found herself across from Major David Kim, who looked distinctly uncomfortable as he reviewed her file on his tablet. "I'm sorry, Specialist Rodriguez. The access restriction came directly from Lieutenant Colonel Webb. He cited operational security concerns. Major, I've maintained top-secret clearance for 3 years without incident. My record shows no security violations. What specific concern prompted this action?" Kim avoided her gaze, consulting his notes with obvious reluctance. "He didn't provide specifics, but he mentioned that your recent behavior has raised questions. Apparently, you've been overstepping your assigned responsibilities and attempting to influence operational decisions." Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What decisions?" Kim read from his tablet reluctantly. "Questioning established patrol routes. Attempting to override intelligence assessments. Challenging command decisions in front of subordinates." He looked up with what might have been sympathy. "Look, Elena, I've worked with you extensively. This doesn't sound like the professional I know. But Webb is building documentation that you're becoming disruptive to unit cohesion." "Disruptive?" "For identifying threat patterns. For providing accurate cultural intelligence that has prevented multiple incidents. For exceeding your authorization," Kim corrected gently. "For acting like you're qualified to make tactical assessments that require combat experience and advanced military education." Elena left the personnel office with her access temporarily restored to basic levels. But the message was unmistakable: conform to limitations or face elimination from the mission entirely. As she walked back toward her reassigned workspace in the general administrative area, she passed the training compound where Clark was conducting squad exercises. He acknowledged her with a brief nod, seemingly oblivious to the systematic campaign being orchestrated against her. That evening, Elena remained at the base long after normal duty hours, but she wasn't alone. Master Sergeant O'Brien found her in the nearly empty dining facility at 2100 hours, nursing coffee that had long since grown cold. "Rodriguez, what's really happening here?" O'Brien asked, settling across from her. "Webb has been asking detailed questions about your work patterns, your access history, even your personal communications. I've never seen him target someone so specifically." "I think he wants me transferred back to a stateside assignment," Elena replied carefully. "Why? You're the most effective linguistic specialist this base has ever had. Half our successful intelligence operations in the past year depended on your cultural analysis and translation work." Elena studied O'Brien thoughtfully. He represented the old guard of military leadership, someone who valued competence over politics and results over appearances. "Can I ask you something confidentially?" "Shoot." If someone hypothetically possessed all the qualifications for intelligence operations, all the training and certifications, but was blocked from field assignments because of bureaucratic gatekeeping, what would you advise them? O'Brien was quiet for several minutes, turning his coffee mug slowly between weathered hands. Hypothetically, I'd say that person should remember that the military is larger than any single command, and larger than any individual officer's prejudices. Sometimes you have to navigate around obstacles instead of confronting them directly, even if it means abandoning the mission you're best qualified to support. Elena, O'Brien's voice softened. Some talents are meant to be utilized in the field, whether or not current assignments reflect that reality. The question is whether you're willing to take risks to ensure your capabilities serve where they're most needed. After O'Brien departed, Elena opened her secure communication device and composed a carefully worded message to Major Kim. Request: immediate consultation regarding specialized assignment opportunities. Situation deteriorating rapidly. The response arrived within 40 minutes. Request confirmed. Report to Bagram Air Base 0600 Friday for assessment. New assignment pending qualification review. Elena printed the message, folded it carefully, and secured it in her personal effects. Tomorrow she would submit formal documentation to Major Kim's intelligence division. She would follow established procedures and document everything meticulously. But tonight, she had one additional message to transmit. This communication went directly to Colonel Patricia Hayes, the regional commander and Webb's direct superior. The subject line read, "Request for formal review of discriminatory practices and security protocol violations." Elena had been playing defense for 14 months. Now it was time to demonstrate that the best defense was a strategically planned offensive. The meeting was scheduled for 0700 in Conference Room Alpha, the sterile environment, where careers were typically terminated behind closed doors. Elena arrived 20 minutes early, her personnel documentation and supporting evidence organized in a leather portfolio. Her uniform was pressed to regulation standards, and despite minimal sleep, her mind was focused and clear as she arranged her materials on the conference table. Lieutenant Colonel Webb entered precisely on time, followed by Captain Torres and Major Kim. Elena's pulse quickened as she realized this wasn't a standard personnel consultation. This was a coordinated effort to eliminate a perceived threat to established authority. Specialist Rodriguez, Webb began without preliminary courtesies, remaining standing to emphasize his positional authority. It has come to my attention that you've been engaging in unauthorized communications with personnel outside this command structure. Specifically, you've been discussing classified operational details with individuals who lack appropriate clearance levels. Elena felt ice forming in her veins. Sir, I need to see the specific allegations. Captain Torres, please review the documented incidents. Torres opened her folder with theatrical precision. On Tuesday, March 15th, Specialist Rodriguez was observed discussing infiltration tactics with non-intelligence personnel in the communication center. On Thursday, March 17th, she accessed classified threat assessment databases without proper authorization. On Monday, March 21st, she attempted to override established reconnaissance protocols for the Spin-Boldak sector without consulting the operational chain of command. Elena maintained her composure despite recognizing the deliberate mischaracterization of legitimate activities. Each allegation was technically accurate, but stripped of essential context. The non-intelligence personnel in the communication center was a visiting Special Forces liaison she'd been briefing on local cultural dynamics. The threat assessment database was accessible to all personnel with her clearance level for analytical purposes. The reconnaissance protocol modification was an emergency recommendation when intelligence indicated imminent ambush potential. Sir, Elena said evenly, I can provide complete context for each incident that demonstrates they were within established Regulations and necessary for mission effectiveness. Context doesn't alter facts, Rodriguez, Webb interrupted. You've been operating beyond your authorization. You've been acting like you possess qualifications for field intelligence work that you simply don't have. It's time you accepted reality. Elena looked at the three faces across from her. Kim appeared. Uncomfortable, avoiding direct eye contact. Torres looked triumphant, as if victory had already been secured. Webb had the expression of someone who believed the outcome was predetermined. What reality is that, sir? That you're a 28-year-old translator who will never qualify for field intelligence work. That all your fantasies about being an operational analyst, about contributing to tactical planning, are delusions based on overconfidence rather than actual capability. You're not intelligence material, Rodriguez. You lack the strategic thinking and tactical awareness required for real operational work. The words struck Elena like physical impacts. She'd heard variations throughout her career, but hearing it stated so bluntly in an official setting made the assessment more devastating. Furthermore, Webb continued, I am recommending immediate reassignment to a stateside linguistic position where your unauthorized activities won't compromise operational security. Somewhere your analytical limitations won't endanger actual intelligence operations. Elena stared at the conference table, her vision momentarily blurring. 14 months of exemplary service. 14 months of exceeding every standard. 14 months of proving her value daily, and it culminated in this moment in a sterile room with three people who had already determined her fate based on preconceptions rather than performance. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Webb asked, the question purely procedural. Elena looked up at him, and for the first time in 14 months, she allowed him to see exactly what she was thinking. Yes, sir, I do. Elena reached into her portfolio and extracted a single document bearing official military intelligence letterhead. The paper carried weight that transcended rank, the kind of authorization that could reshape careers and expose institutional failures. She placed it deliberately on the conference table where all three officers could see the seal. This is my formal transfer request to the 82nd Intelligence Battalion, effective immediately. I submitted to Colonel Hayes's office yesterday afternoon. Webb's face drained of color as he recognized the implications. You can't simply transfer to intelligence operations. That's not how the system works. Elena stood, her chair scraping against the floor with finality. Actually, sir, that's precisely how it works when you possess the qualifications they require and the recommendations they respect. Interesting thing about being underestimated for 14 months, you learn to develop relationships beyond your immediate command structure. She placed a second document on the table, this one bearing the signature of Major David Kim and the official seal of Regional Intelligence Command. This is my acceptance letter from the 82nd Intelligence Battalion. I report to Bagram Air Base on Friday for final operational assessment. Torres leaned forward, scanning the document with disbelief. This can't be legitimate. Intelligence transfers require extensive vetting and command approval. I assure you it's completely authentic, Captain. The 82nd is particularly interested in linguists who also possess advanced analytical capabilities, especially those who've demonstrated the ability to identify threat patterns that conventional analysis missed. Elena gathered her documentation and moved toward the door. Oh, and Lieutenant Colonel Webb, you might want to verify your facts before making accusations about unauthorized activities. Everything I did was within established regulations, and I have complete documentation to substantiate that claim. As she reached the door, Elena turned back one final time. You were correct about one thing, sir. I was never meant to be just a translator. I was meant to use language as a tool for strategic intelligence gathering and operational planning. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving three stunned officers in sudden silence. Elena's quarters had always been Spartan, but now they resembled a tactical intelligence center. Advanced language texts covered her desk alongside tactical manuals and intelligence analysis protocols. Her laptop displayed multiple windows showing 82nd Battalion orientation materials, and her bed was buried under equipment lists and security clearance documentation. She had 72 hours to prepare for the most significant evaluation of her military career. The secure phone rang at 05:30 Friday morning. Elena answered immediately, expecting Major Kim with final instructions. Instead, she heard Master Sergeant O'Brien's voice. "Rodriguez, we need to talk immediately." 20 minutes later, Elena opened her door to find not just O'Brien, but also Specialist Amy Chun from the communications section and Corporal Jake Martinez, the unit medic. They carried the unmistakable demeanor of people engaged in something unofficial. "What's happening, Sergeant?" Elena asked, stepping aside to allow them entry. O'Brien surveyed her quarters, taking in the evidence of her preparation. "Word is circulating throughout the base about your transfer, about your intelligence assignment, about what happened in that meeting with Webb." "Reactions are mixed," Chun added, her usual quiet demeanor replaced by something resembling excitement. "About your qualification for intelligence work, about what it means for other support specialists who've been told they lack the capacity for operational roles." Martinez, who rarely spoke during group discussions, stepped forward with unexpected intensity. "Elena, I need to tell you something. Webb tried to pressure me into providing false documentation about your medical training activities. He wanted me to claim you'd been accessing restricted medical protocols without authorization." Elena felt her stomach tighten with familiar anxiety. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to submit his request through proper medical channels." Martinez replied firmly, "But Elena, he's not finished. He's contacted personnel at other installations, trying to find people who will support his narrative about your unsuitability for intelligence work." "He's panicking," O'Brien observed, settling into the only chair in the room. "If you succeed with the 82nd, if you actually become an intelligence analyst, it demonstrates that every time he's dismissed support personnel as lacking operational capability, he was wrong. And if he was wrong about you, what else has he misjudged?" Chun pulled a secure storage device from her pocket. "These are the actual communication intercepts from the past 6 months. The ones showing how many times Webb's tactical assessments contradicted your linguistic analysis, and how many times your interpretations proved accurate when field operations were conducted." Elena stared at the device, understanding its implications. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because if Webb tries to sabotage your intelligence transfer, you'll need evidence that his judgment regarding analytical capability has been consistently flawed," O'Brien explained. "And because we've all observed what happens when qualified personnel stay silent about questionable leadership decisions." That afternoon, Elena drove to a private training facility outside the base perimeter, a place she'd been visiting for 8 months to work with retired intelligence operative Sarah Mitchell. Mitchell had served 3 decades in military intelligence, including extensive experience in Afghanistan, and had become Elena's mentor in analytical techniques that extended far beyond standard training. "So," Mitchell said as they walked toward the isolated briefing room, "Friday is assessment day." "I'm terrified," Elena admitted honestly. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." "But Elena, I've trained hundreds of intelligence analysts, and you possess something unusual. You have cultural intuition, the ability to process linguistic patterns and behavioral indicators simultaneously and extract strategic intelligence that pure technical analysis misses." They spent the next 4 hours reviewing advanced analytical scenarios, cultural interpretation exercises, and tactical decision-making under stress. Elena handled each challenge with the methodical precision that had made her exceptional at translation work, but now applied to intelligence synthesis. "You know what your real advantage is?" Mitchell asked as they reviewed Elena's performance. You've spent 14 months understanding how intelligence operations function from the support perspective. Most analysts understand how to process information, but they don't truly comprehend the complete spectrum of how intelligence integrates with operational planning. Most intelligence officers think translation is just about converting words, Elena replied. They don't recognize how language patterns reveal strategic intentions, cultural dynamics, and operational timing. That evening, Elena sat at her small desk, reviewing her 82nd Battalion acceptance letter for what felt like the 100th time. The official language was clinical and precise, but buried in the second paragraph was a phrase that made her pulse accelerate whenever she read it. Upon successful completion of assessment, candidate will be assigned a specialized tactical intelligence team focusing on high-priority threat analysis in complex cultural environments. She picked up her secure phone and dialed a number she'd memorized, but used only twice before. Major Kim, this is Specialist Rodriguez. Elena, are you prepared for Friday? Yes, sir. But I need to ask something. If I complete the assessment successfully, what happens to my current assignment? There was a brief pause. Your current commanding officer will be notified of your transfer to intelligence operations. Your new assignment will be classified, but I can tell you that you'll be working with some of the most capable analysts in military intelligence. Elena felt determination solidifying within her. Including some I've supported from the linguistic side? Precisely. Elena, I want you to understand something. The position you're being considered for isn't just about analytical skills. It's about integrating cultural intelligence with tactical planning in ways that conventional approaches often miss. You'll be representing not just the Army, but the entire intelligence community's commitment to utilizing all available expertise, regardless of traditional career paths. I understand, sir. Good. Get some rest. Friday begins early. Elena disconnected and looked around her quarters one final time. In 72 hours, everything would change. She would either prove that 14 months of preparation had been worthwhile, or she would fail in the most definitive way possible. Either way, she'd finally discover what she was truly capable of when given the opportunity to demonstrate her full potential. Bagram Air Base at 0400 was a different universe than the isolated outpost where Elena had spent the past year. The intelligence complex buzzed with activity as analytical teams processed overnight intelligence and assessment groups prepared for daily evaluations. Elena stood in the pre-dawn darkness, her equipment bag secure over her shoulder, watching intelligence specialists move with practiced efficiency through their routines. Specialist Rodriguez. Elena turned to see a compact woman in tactical gear approaching. The name tape read Captain Williams, and her demeanor suggested extensive field experience. I'm your assessment officer today. I understand you've been working toward this opportunity for quite some time. Elena nodded, her throat suddenly tight despite the 3 cups of coffee she'd consumed during the drive to Bagram. Yes, ma'am. Before we begin, I want you to know that I've reviewed your file thoroughly. Your linguistic record is impressive, and your analytical work has garnered attention at levels you probably don't realize. But theoretical knowledge and practical application are different challenges, and today we're going to determine if you can handle the pressure of real-time intelligence operations. They walked toward a complex of buildings that housed the assessment center. Elena had studied the intelligence selection process extensively, but seeing the actual facilities made everything suddenly more concrete and intimidating. We'll begin with analytical assessment, then move to cultural interpretation under stress, communication interception and analysis, and finally scenario-based evaluation, Williams explained. Most candidates find the final component most challenging. It combines sleep deprivation, information overload, and complex problem-solving while simulating the pressure of operational intelligence work. The next 14 hours would determine whether Elena's preparation had been sufficient, whether her confidence was justified, or whether Webb's assessment of her limitations would prove accurate. As she entered the first testing facility, Elena felt the weight of not just her own career, but of every support specialist who had been told they lacked the capacity for operational roles. The analytical assessment pushed Elena to the absolute limits of her intellectual capabilities. Complex intelligence scenarios with incomplete information, cultural dynamics that required intuitive understanding rather than textbook knowledge, and time pressures that demanded immediate decision-making while maintaining analytical accuracy. Elena drew on every technique Mitchell had taught her, every cultural insight she'd developed during her deployment, and every strategic concept she'd absorbed during months of independent study. Most candidates approach these problems from a purely technical perspective. Captain Williams observed as Elena completed a particularly challenging scenario involving multiple tribal dynamics and conflicting intelligence sources. You're integrating linguistic patterns, cultural context, and strategic implications simultaneously. That's unusual. It's how real situations develop, ma'am. Intelligence doesn't exist in isolation. It's always embedded in cultural and strategic contexts that affect its interpretation and application. The communication interception phase came next. Elena demonstrated proficiency with every linguistic challenge they presented, intercepted conversations in multiple dialects, coded communications that required cultural knowledge to decode, and complex negotiations where understanding subtext was more important than literal translation. "Where did you develop this level of cultural fluency, Rodriguez?" asked the evaluation team leader during a brief break. "On my own time, sir. 14 months of working with tribal liaisons, studying regional history, and analyzing communication patterns from actual field operations." As evening approached, the final phase began. Elena, already exhausted from the day's intensive evaluation, was placed in a simulated operational environment with minimal resources and a complex intelligence crisis that required immediate analysis and recommendations. For the next 8 hours, she navigated the challenge, making critical assessments under extreme pressure, adapting to changing conditions, and demonstrating the core qualities required for tactical intelligence work. When she finally completed the scenario at 0200, Captain Williams was waiting. "That's it, Rodriguez. Assessment complete." "How did I perform, ma'am?" Williams studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Official results come tomorrow. But I'll tell you this. In 7 years of conducting intelligence assessments, I've rarely seen someone with your combination of cultural awareness and analytical precision." Elena slept for 5 hours in a temporary barracks room, her dreams filled with fragments of the day's challenges. At 0700, she reported to the administration building as instructed, her uniform fresh, but her body still aching from the previous day's mental marathon. Major Kim was waiting in a small conference room, a folder open before him. "Specialist Rodriguez, please sit down." Elena sat, her back straight despite her exhaustion, her face neutral despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "I've reviewed your assessment results," Kim began, his expression unreadable. Captain Williams was quite thorough in her evaluation. Elena waited, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You've achieved the highest scores in cultural analysis we've recorded in the past 2 years. Your linguistic interception work exceeded all benchmarks. Your performance in the scenario-based evaluation showed exactly the kind of adaptability and strategic thinking we need for complex operational environments." Kim closed the folder and looked directly at Elena. "Welcome to the 82nd Intelligence Battalion, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez." Elena blinked in surprise. "Staff Sergeant?" "The promotion comes with the assignment." "Congratulations, Elena. You've earned it." The phone in Lieutenant Colonel Webb's office began ringing at 08:15 and continued intermittently throughout the morning. Elena's transfer to the 82nd Intelligence Battalion had been processed through official channels, and word was spreading through Forward Operating Base Phoenix like wildfire. The translator, who had been dismissed as lacking analytical capability, had just qualified for one of the most selective intelligence units in the military. "Sir, you need to see this." Captain Torres burst into Webb's office, her usual confidence notably diminished. She held up her tablet, displaying an official notification from Central Command. Effective immediately, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez is transferred to 82nd Intelligence Battalion under Operational Classification Alpha 7. All materials pertaining to Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's qualifications and performance evaluations are to be forwarded to Major David Kim, Intelligence Personnel Division. Webb read the notification 3 times, his jaw tightening with each review. "This proves nothing," he said finally. "Anyone can transfer to a support role in intelligence operations. That doesn't make her a field analyst." "Sir," Torres swallowed hard, "the transfer code Alpha 7 designates active intelligence operations personnel. It's not a support position. And there's more, she's been promoted to Staff Sergeant." The implication struck Webb like a physical blow. If Elena had been accepted as an intelligence analyst and promoted in the process, it meant her qualifications had been validated at the highest levels of military intelligence. It meant everything he'd said about her lacking analytical capability had been definitively refuted by the most selective intelligence units in the Army. "Get me Colonel Hayes on the phone," Webb said quietly. The conversation with his superior was brief and profoundly uncomfortable. Colonel Hayes had already been contacted by the 82nd Intelligence Battalion, confirming Elena's transfer and commending her exceptional performance during assessment. She'd also received several inquiries from other personnel at FOB Phoenix regarding the circumstances surrounding Elena's departure. "Marcus," Colonel Hayes said, using Webb's first name in a tone that indicated this was not a friendly consultation, "I need to understand what happened with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez." The 82nd marked her transfer as urgent and mentioned she'd been operating under adverse conditions at her previous assignment. Webb felt perspiration forming despite the air conditioning. "Ma'am, I was simply maintaining unit discipline and ensuring proper role assignment based on demonstrated capabilities. I've been reviewing the documentation you submitted regarding Rodriguez's performance issues. Interesting reading. You claim she was insubordinate and exceeded her authority, but I've also been examining her actual performance records. 14 months of superior ratings, multiple commendations for analytical work, and not a single disciplinary action until this sudden flurry of complaints from you." "Ma'am, her recent behavior indicated." "Her recent behavior," Hayes interrupted, "appears to have been preparation for an intelligence assignment that she obtained through her own qualifications and initiative. An assignment that reflects exceptionally well on this command and demonstrates the quality of personnel we develop here. Unless there's something you're not telling me." Webb realized he was trapped in an impossible position. Any attempt to further discredit Elena would now appear like deliberate obstruction of a valuable military asset. "No, ma'am. I may have misinterpreted the scope of her activities." "I see. Well, I think we need to have a longer conversation about your personnel management approach. My office, 1400 hours. After disconnecting, Webb sat at his desk staring at the wall. Within the span of a few hours, his carefully constructed narrative about Elena's inadequacies had completely disintegrated. Worse, he was beginning to realize that several people on the base had been documenting his treatment of her, and those records would not present him favorably. Meanwhile, at Bagram Air Base, Elena was completing her final briefing as a newly assigned intelligence analyst. Major Kim handed her a folder containing her operational assignment details. "You'll be stationed with Intelligence Task Force Viper at our Forward Analysis Center in Kabul," Kim explained. Your team specializes in high-priority threat assessment and strategic intelligence gathering. You'll be conducting everything from communication intercepts to field analysis, working with analysts from across the intelligence community. Elena reviewed the assignment details, hardly believing what she was reading. "Sir, this is exactly what I've been preparing for." "I know. Your background in linguistic operations gives you a unique perspective on intelligence gathering. You understand the complete operational spectrum from cultural analysis to strategic assessment. That's precisely what we need for these complex assignments." "What about my previous assignment, Lieutenant Colonel Webb?" Kim's expression hardened. "Slightly. Your former commander is currently having a conversation with his superior about his personnel management practices. I suspect he's learning that talented analysts don't materialize from nowhere. They're developed through proper leadership and recognition. When you try to suppress capability instead of nurturing it, you end up losing valuable assets to organizations that know how to recognize potential." Elena felt a mixture of satisfaction and regret. She'd achieved her objective, but at the cost of creating significant problems for her former unit. "I hope I didn't cause excessive disruption." "Elena, you didn't cause disruption, you revealed disruption that already existed. There's a significant difference." That afternoon, Elena received an unexpected call from Master Sergeant O'Brien. "Elena, I wanted to inform you that the entire support staff observed Lieutenant Colonel Webb get summoned to Colonel Hayes' office today. The meeting lasted 4 hours. He emerged looking like he'd been through a firefight and lost decisively." "How is everyone responding to the news?" "Mixed reactions. The people who actually worked with you are proud as hell. The people who dismissed your capabilities are suddenly re-evaluating their assessment criteria. Let's just say that Webb is having an exceptionally difficult day. Word is that Colonel Hayes is conducting a comprehensive review of his command decisions." Elena felt a pang of guilt. "I never intended to damage anyone's career." "Elena, you didn't damage anyone's career. You saved your own. And you demonstrated to a lot of people on this base that excellence doesn't always conform to traditional expectations. You've got support specialists now inquiring about intelligence training, communications techs asking about analytical qualifications. You've inspired people. I just wanted the opportunity to use my skills where they could make the most impact. I know. But sometimes when you reach for what you deserve, you show other people what's possible for them too. That's not a negative thing." After ending the call, Elena walked to the window of her temporary quarters at Bagram Air Base. Tomorrow she would fly to her new assignment in Kabul. She'd be working with some of the most capable intelligence analysts in the military, conducting operations that would test every skill she'd developed over the past year. But tonight, she was thinking about the invisible people at bases around the world, the translators, communication specialists, and cultural advisors who kept everything functioning while others received recognition for operational success. She hoped her story would reach some of them, and that they'd understand that being underestimated could be leveraged effectively if you used it strategically. Elena had spent 14 months learning to be invisible within the system. Now she was ready to demonstrate exactly what invisible people could accomplish when they finally stepped into roles where their capabilities could be fully utilized. 2 weeks after Elena's transfer to intelligence operations, the investigation into Lieutenant Colonel Webb's leadership practices was completed. The briefing room at FOB Phoenix was filled with personnel from across the base, everyone from senior officers to junior enlisted, all summoned to hear the findings of Colonel Hayes' comprehensive review. Elena wasn't present, of course. She was 7,000 miles away at the Intelligence Analysis Center in Kabul, preparing for her first official mission as a tactical intelligence analyst. But her influence was felt in every document, every witness statement, every piece of evidence that had been gathered about her treatment and the circumstances surrounding her departure. The investigation has revealed several concerning patterns, Colonel Hayes announced to the assembled group. First, we found evidence of discriminatory practices in assignment and advancement opportunities. Second, there were multiple instances of retaliation against personnel who questioned established procedures. Third, and most troubling, we found evidence of deliberate suppression of personnel development based on prejudicial assumptions rather than performance metrics. Master Sergeant O'Brien sat in the front row, watching Webb's face grow increasingly pale with each revelation. Next to him, Specialist Chun held a tablet containing the communication records that had helped build the case against Webb's leadership. Approach. The most egregious example, Hayes continued, involves former Specialist Rodriguez, now Staff Sergeant Rodriguez of the 82nd Intelligence Battalion. Despite 14 months of exemplary service, advanced qualifications obtained through her own initiative, and performance metrics that exceeded many of our intelligence personnel, she was systematically excluded from advancement opportunities and subjected to increasing restrictions on her duties. Captain Torres shifted uncomfortably in her seat. 2 weeks ago, she'd been part of Webb's inner circle. Now she was realizing how her participation in Elena's marginalization appeared to the rest of the command. Furthermore, Hayes said, her voice growing colder, when Staff Sergeant Rodriguez attempted to pursue legitimate career advancement through proper channels, she was subjected to fabricated accusations, inappropriate security clearance restrictions, and what can only be described as a coordinated campaign designed to force her resignation from military service. The room was completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning system. Everyone present had witnessed pieces of Elena's treatment, but hearing it presented systematically was damning. The irony, Hayes continued, is that while Lieutenant Colonel Webb was building documentation to remove Rodriguez from the Army, entirely she was being recruited by the 82nd Intelligence Battalion as one of the most promising analyst candidates they'd evaluated in years. Her performance during assessment was described as exceptional, and her background in linguistic operations was considered invaluable for complex intelligence missions. Staff Sergeant Clark raised his hand. "Ma'am, what's Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's current status?" Hayes consulted her notes. She's completed her initial integration phase and has been assigned to Intelligence Task Force Viper, responsible for high-priority threat assessment in complex operational environments. 4 days ago, she successfully completed her first mission, a strategic analysis operation that required infiltrating hostile communications networks under extremely challenging conditions. Her team leader described her performance as flawless. A murmur ran through the room. The translator they'd known was now conducting classified intelligence missions with elite analytical teams. "The question before us," Hayes said, "is how we ensure this kind of leadership failure doesn't happen again. We lost a valuable intelligence asset, not because she wasn't qualified, but because her immediate supervisor couldn't see past his own preconceptions." She turned her attention directly to Webb. "Lieutenant Colonel, you have 2 options. You can request immediate reassignment to a non-leadership position at another installation, or you can face formal disciplinary proceedings that will likely result in your separation from the Army. I'll give you 24 hours to decide." After the meeting, O'Brien found himself in the parking area with several other NCOs who had worked closely with Elena. The mood was somber but satisfied. "I keep thinking about her last day here," Chun said. "When she walked out of that meeting with her head held high, she knew something we didn't." "She knew she was better than how she was being treated," Martinez replied. "And she did something about it instead of just accepting it as the way things are." Corporal Lisa Patel, who rarely spoke in group settings, surprised everyone with her next comment. "My cousin's thinking about joining the Army. Last night I told her about Elena. I told her that's what happens when you work hard and don't let anyone define your limitations based on their assumptions about who you are." Meanwhile, in the administration building, Webb sat alone in his office, staring at his computer screen. He'd already begun typing his reassignment request, knowing that fighting the charges would only make things worse. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and several of his former allies had provided statements supporting the investigation's findings. His phone buzzed with a message from Torres. "Sir, I wanted to apologize for my role in what happened. To Elena, I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Similar messages had been arriving throughout the day. People who had participated in Elena's marginalization were now distancing themselves, realizing how badly they'd misjudged the situation. The base that had once seemed unified under his leadership was now questioning everything he'd told them about analytical capability, qualifications, and who deserved respect. That evening, O'Brien received a secure video call from Elena herself. The connection was poor, the image grainy, but Elena's face was unmistakable even in the dim light of what appeared to be a tactical operations center. "Sergeant, I heard about the investigation results. How is everyone handling it?" "Mixed feelings," O'Brien admitted. "People are happy you got what you deserved, but there's some guilt about not speaking up sooner." "No one should feel guilty," Elena said firmly. "Military hierarchy exists for good reasons. People were following the chain of command. I don't blame anyone for that." "What about Webb?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "I feel sorry for him. Actually, he was so focused on maintaining traditional role boundaries that he couldn't recognize capability when it was right in front of him. That's not just bad leadership. It's a tactical liability that puts missions at risk." "Any regrets about how things developed?" "Only one," Elena replied. "I wish I'd found the courage to fight back sooner. Maybe if I had, other qualified people wouldn't have been subjected to the same treatment." "Elena, you fought back at exactly the right time, in exactly the right way. And you inspired a lot of people here to think differently about what's possible." After ending the call, O'Brien walked out to the training area where he often found himself when he needed to think. A group of young soldiers were running tactical drills, including several female support specialists who'd been inspired by Elena's story. "Sergeant, is it true that Staff Sergeant Rodriguez qualified for Intelligence Task Force Viper on her first attempt?" asked a communications specialist who'd recently started analytical training. O'Brien smiled. "She did. And you know why? Because Elena Rodriguez understood something that too many people forget. True intelligence capability isn't just about technical knowledge. It's about cultural awareness, adaptability, and understanding the complete operational spectrum. She mastered those elements while everyone was focusing on what they thought she couldn't do." 3 months later, Elena crouched behind a concrete barrier in a contested district of Kabul, her intelligence team spread out in defensive positions. Around her, the analytical mission had become complicated when unexpected insurgent activity cut off their primary communication route. As the team's specialist in linguistic intelligence and cultural analysis, Elena was rapidly formulating alternative approaches based on intercepted communications and behavioral patterns she'd observed. "Viper Alpha, this is Viper 6, she whispered into her communication device. "Primary intelligence gathering compromised. Hostile forces have established surveillance positions at all pre-planned observation points. Requesting satellite reconnaissance of Sector 12 for possible new approach routes." "Negative, Viper 6, came the response. "Satellite assets unavailable for next 60 minutes. You're on your own." Elena processed this information while scanning the urban terrain around them. The team had a high-priority intelligence target to assess, the window was closing, and conventional options were exhausted. This was where her unique background proved invaluable. "Viper team, rally on my position," she ordered. "I have a new approach." Captain Daniel Foster, the team leader, moved to her position. "What are you thinking, Rodriguez?" Elena pulled up a digital map on her tactical tablet. "Sir, there's a network of underground utility tunnels that doesn't appear on standard maps. I coordinated cultural liaison work in this region during my previous assignment. These tunnels were used by local merchants during the Reconstruction period. How do you know they're still accessible? I don't. But based on local infrastructure patterns and recent communication intercepts mentioning underground movement, they should connect to the drainage system here. She indicated a point 300 meters east, which would bypass all surveillance positions and give us direct access to the target observation point. Foster studied her for a moment. That's why they wanted you on this team. Let's move. The team moved silently through the darkened streets, Elena leading them to a concealed utility access point. The tunnel beyond was narrow and partially flooded, but it was unguarded and provided a direct route that circumvented the insurgents' carefully planned surveillance network. 40 minutes later, they emerged at the optimal observation point, their intelligence target secure, the mission accomplished through a solution that had been invisible to standard tactical planning. As the extraction helicopter descended, Foster clasped Elena's shoulder. Rodriguez, when we get back to base, I'm putting you in for a commendation. That wasn't just quick thinking. That was the kind of operational awareness that saves missions. Elena nodded, feeling a sense of validation that went beyond any formal recognition. She was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Not because she was trying to prove anything anymore, but because this was where her skills and preparation had led her. The mission that would define Elena's intelligence career began like many others, with minimal warning and incomplete information. Intelligence Task Force Viper had been deployed to a remote analysis station near the Pakistan border. Intelligence indicated that a high-priority target was coordinating attacks on coalition forces through a sophisticated communication network. Elena was reviewing intercepted communications in the Tactical Operations Center when Captain Foster entered with the mission briefing. Listen up, team. We have a time-sensitive target in the Spin Bolduc region. Intelligence believes Tariq Hassan is coordinating with multiple cell groups from a compound 15 kilometers north of our position. Our window is narrow. We need to move within the next 4 hours. Elena studied the intelligence packet, immediately noticing inconsistencies in the communication patterns. Sir, these linguistic markers don't match Hassan's historical communication style. He's never coordinated directly with local cells this close to coalition positions before. Foster nodded. I had the same concern. That's why you're taking lead on the intelligence analysis. If this is legitimate, we need the most direct approach possible. If it's deception, we need to identify the real objective and adjust accordingly. 8 hours later, Elena was positioned on a ridge overlooking the target compound, observing through advanced surveillance equipment while the rest of the team maintained security positions. What she observed confirmed her suspicions. The patterns of activity didn't match the intelligence briefing. Instead of a high-level coordination meeting, the compound appeared to be a logistics transfer point for something else entirely. Viper Actual, this is Viper 6, she reported. Target location shows minimal leadership security presence, not consistent with high-priority coordination protocols. I'm observing significant equipment movement toward the eastern structures. Recommend we maintain observation rather than immediate action. Granted, Viper 6. What's your assessment? This isn't a leadership meeting, it's a supply hub. They're moving weapons and equipment, not protecting personnel. Recommend we track the supply chain rather than hitting the compound. It could lead us to the actual operational center. Your call, Rodriguez. You've got tactical lead on intelligence gathering. Elena directed the team to establish multiple observation points around the compound. Over the next 14 hours, they documented every vehicle movement, every personnel transfer, building a comprehensive picture of the operation. When a heavily laden convoy departed under cover of darkness, they were ready. Following at a safe distance, the team tracked the vehicles to a larger compound concealed in a remote Mountain Valley, a location that hadn't appeared in any intelligence briefings. Elena's methodical approach had uncovered what appeared to be the actual regional coordination center for the insurgent network. Viper Actual. Requesting full surveillance authorization on these coordinates and permission to establish comprehensive intelligence gathering on the new target. For the next 5 days, Intelligence Task Force Viper maintained continuous observation of the compound, documenting personnel movements, security rotations, and communication patterns. Elena's background in linguistic analysis allowed her to identify key vulnerabilities in the compound's operations, the timing of supply deliveries, gaps in security coverage, and communication windows when coordination was most vulnerable. When the order finally came to conduct the intelligence operation, the approach was planned around these insights. The team infiltrated during a precise 40-minute window when security rotations and supply deliveries created a temporary gap in the surveillance perimeter. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned until an unexpected communication burst from the compound triggered defensive measures they hadn't anticipated. The team found themselves cut off from their planned extraction route, with hostile forces closing in from multiple directions. Viper Team, fall back to position Charlie, Foster ordered as incoming fire intensified. Extraction point compromised, requesting immediate alternative. Elena assessed their situation rapidly. They had acquired the critical intelligence they needed and had neutralized key communication capabilities, but their position was becoming untenable. The team began a fighting withdrawal toward their secondary extraction point, moving through difficult terrain while maintaining tactical cohesion. Then disaster struck. As they crossed an exposed ridgeline, a concealed sniper found his target. Captain Foster went down hard, a bullet having shattered his shoulder and caused severe arterial bleeding. "Man down!" Elena called immediately, moving to his position while the rest of the team provided covering fire. Blood was flowing from Foster's wound at an alarming rate. Elena applied pressure and a tourniquet with practiced efficiency, but it was clear he couldn't move under his own power. Viper Actual, Viper 6. Captain is hit, critical condition. We need immediate extraction. Viper 6, nearest medevac. Is 25 minutes out. Hostile forces converging on your position from multiple vectors. Elena made a rapid assessment. The team was down to 6 effective operators, including herself. Hostile forces numbered at least 25 and were closing from 3 directions. Their only advantage was the defensible position they currently held, a rocky outcropping that provided cover from most angles. "Viper Team, defensive positions," she ordered, her voice calm despite the gravity of their situation. "We hold here until extraction arrives." Staff Sergeant Collins, the team's senior analyst, looked at her with concern. "Rodriguez, those are impossible odds." "Those are the only odds we have," Elena replied firmly. "Set up interlocking fields of observation. Prioritize ammunition conservation. We only need to hold for 25 minutes. As the team established their defensive perimeter, Elena worked to stabilize Foster's condition. His pulse was weak, but steady, the tourniquet having slowed the bleeding enough to buy precious time. The rocky outcropping provided decent cover, but Elena knew they were essentially trapped with limited ammunition and a growing number of hostiles closing in. "Rodriguez," Foster whispered, his voice strained with pain, "you have tactical command. Get the team out." "We're all getting out, sir," she replied firmly. 25 minutes. We can hold for 25 minutes. The first probing attack came within 3 minutes, a reconnaissance by fire designed to test their defensive capabilities. The team responded with disciplined, targeted shots, repelling the assault while conserving ammunition. But Elena knew this was merely the beginning. The enemy was assessing their position, identifying weaknesses, preparing for a more coordinated assault. She moved from position to position, adjusting fields of fire, redistributing ammunition, and maintaining the defensive integrity of their perimeter. Her years of studying tactical manuals and combat operations were now being tested under the most extreme conditions possible. "Collins, adjust your position 15 degrees left," she called to the senior analyst. "Shun, I need you to watch that ravine approach. Martinez, keep eyes on the eastern slope." When the second attack came, it was from multiple directions simultaneously, a serious attempt to overwhelm their position through superior numbers. Elena coordinated the defense with the calm precision that had made her exceptional at intelligence. Analysis now applied to battlefield command. "Conserve ammunition," she reminded the team as the firefight intensified. "Make every shot count. Watch your sectors." For 12 minutes, they held against increasingly determined assaults. The team was functioning with remarkable efficiency, their training and Elena's tactical guidance allowing them to repel forces that outnumbered them more than 4-1. But the situation was deteriorating. 2 more team members had sustained injuries, ammunition was running critically low, and the enemy was preparing for what appeared to be a final, overwhelming assault. "Viper 6, this is Angel Flight. Medevac 7 minutes out. Can you mark your position?" "Affirmative, Angel Flight." "Be advised, we are under heavy fire with multiple casualties. Landing zone is not secure." Elena assessed their options rapidly. The helicopter couldn't land under current conditions, but if they didn't create a secure landing zone, they'd lose Foster and possibly others. She made a decision that would either save her team or cost her everything. "Collins, you and the team hold this position and prepare the wounded for immediate evacuation. I'm going to create a diversion." Collins stared at her in disbelief. "Rodriguez, that's suicide. It's tactical necessity. I need 7 minutes to draw their focus away from the landing zone. That's the difference between all of us getting out or none of us getting out." She checked her weapon and grabbed additional magazines from their dwindling supply. "On my signal, mark the landing zone with smoke. Don't wait for me. Get the wounded on that helicopter." Before anyone could object further, Elena slipped away from their position, moving laterally along the ridge to a position 60 meters east. From there, she had a clear view of the enemy's main concentration, approximately 25 fighters, preparing for their final assault. Elena took a deep breath, centered herself, and opened fire. Her first shots took down the apparent leader and 2 key fighters, creating immediate confusion in their ranks. As expected, the majority of enemy fire redirected toward her position, away from the team's defensive perimeter and the incoming landing zone. "Now, Collins," she called into her radio. "Mark the landing zone." Clouds of orange smoke billowed from the team's position as Elena continued to engage the hostile forces. She moved quickly between firing positions, creating the impression of multiple defenders. Her years of tactical training allowed her to maximize the defensive advantages of the terrain, using rocky outcroppings for cover while maintaining clear fields of fire. Through her scope, she saw the medevac helicopter approaching, its distinctive silhouette growing larger against the mountain sky. The enemy forces saw it too, some redirecting their fire toward the incoming aircraft. Elena increased her rate of fire, drawing their attention back to her position, making herself the more immediate threat. The helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust and smoke. Elena provided covering fire as her team moved the wounded aboard, enemy rounds impacting the rocks around her position with increasing frequency. As the last team member boarded, she began her own movement toward extraction, bounding from cover to cover while maintaining suppressive fire. She was 30 meters from the helicopter when a round caught her in the leg. The impact sent her sprawling against a boulder, pain exploding through her thigh. Training took over. She applied immediate pressure to the wound with one hand while continuing to engage targets with the other. "Rodriguez, we need to go now," Collins shouted from the helicopter door, firing to provide her cover. Elena pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the fire in her leg, and made a final sprint toward the aircraft. Enemy fire intensified as she crossed the open ground, rounds kicking up dust at her feet. 20 meters, 15:10. The helicopter was already lifting, hovering just above the ground as Collins reached down to pull her aboard. As the helicopter banked away from the contested zone, Elena collapsed against the cabin wall, the adrenaline that had carried her finally ebbing. Medical personnel immediately moved to assess her wound. "Status report," she demanded through gritted teeth. "Captain stable, Martinez and Chun wounded, but not critical. The rest of the team operational," Collins reported. "The intelligence package is secure." "You held the line, Rodriguez. You held the damn line." Elena nodded, allowing the medic to administer pain medication as the helicopter gained altitude. Through the open door, she could see the hostile position. Growing smaller below them, the position that had nearly been their grave had instead become the site of one of Intelligence Task Force Viper's most successful operations. Back at the Intelligence Center, Elena awoke in the medical facility to find Colonel James Mitchell, the task force commander, standing at her bedside. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," he said, his normally stern expression softened slightly. "How are you feeling?" "Ready to return to duty, sir," she replied automatically, though the pain in her leg suggested otherwise. Mitchell almost smiled. "Captain Foster has submitted his after-action report. It makes for compelling reading." Elena waited, unsure where this was heading. "He credits you with not only saving the team, but salvaging a critical intelligence operation. Says your analytical assessment identified the actual high-value target location after conventional intelligence had missed it. Says your battlefield command under fire was, quote, textbook perfect." "I was just doing my job, sir." "Your job?" Mitchell repeated thoughtfully. "You know, when your transfer came through, there were some who questioned placing a former translator in a direct intelligence role. Some who suggested you might not have the strategic thinking required for complex operations." Elena met his gaze steadily. "And now, sir?" "Now I'm recommending you for the Bronze Star and promoting you to Sergeant First Class, effective immediately. The team you saved is requesting you as their permanent intelligence operations leader." He placed a document on the bed beside her. "This recommendation will go through without opposition." After 3 weeks of recovery, Elena returned to active duty. Intelligence Task Force Viper welcomed her back with a mixture of respect and camaraderie that transcended anything she'd experienced in her previous assignments. These were analysts and operators who judged her solely on her performance, not on preconceptions about what a former translator could accomplish. Captain Foster, still using crutches as his shoulder healed, called her into the Tactical Operations Center on her first day back. "Rodriguez, I wanted you to see this before the official announcement." He handed her a tablet displaying an internal military intelligence bulletin. The headline read, "Sergeant First Class Elena Rodriguez awarded Bronze Star for extraordinary heroism in intelligence operations." Elena scanned the document, uncomfortable with the attention, but proud of the recognition. The citation detailed her actions during the mission, emphasizing her analytical decision-making, tactical leadership, and personal courage under extreme conditions. "There's more," Foster said, taking back the tablet and opening another document. "Your actions have sparked some changes at the institutional level. Command is reviewing intelligence role qualification standards across the board. They're shifting from traditional career path requirements to performance-based metrics." Elena looked up sharply. "Because of one mission?" "Because your performance demonstrated that their existing assumptions were flawed. You were the proof of concept that showed the current model was unnecessarily restrictive." Foster set the tablet down. "But that's not why I called you in. We have a new operation, and I want you to take lead on intelligence planning." Over the next 8 months, Elena led Intelligence Task Force Viper through a series of increasingly complex missions. Her unique background in linguistic operations combined with her proven analytical capabilities made her an invaluable asset for operations that required both cultural precision and strategic awareness. On a rare communication opportunity, Elena was surprised to receive a video call from Captain Torres, her former antagonist from FOB Phoenix. "Rodriguez," Torres began awkwardly, "I wanted to congratulate you on the Bronze Star. It's well-deserved." "Thank you," Elena replied neutrally, still uncertain of Torres's intentions. "I also wanted to apologize. I was wrong about you, wrong in how I treated you, wrong in what I assumed about your capabilities." Torres paused, visibly uncomfortable. "After you left, things changed dramatically at Phoenix. Colonel Hayes implemented new policies for personnel assessment and advancement. I've been re-evaluating many of my own assumptions." Elena studied her former adversary. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked remarkably like genuine self-reflection. "We all have assumptions challenged eventually," Elena said. "The question is what we do afterward." "I'm applying for advanced intelligence training," Torres admitted. "Following your path, in a way. Your success opened doors for others." After the call ended, Elena sat quietly processing the unexpected conversation. Her personal journey had been about proving herself, about earning the role she knew she deserved. She hadn't set out to change the system or challenge institutional biases, yet somehow she'd accomplished both. 8 months after receiving the Bronze Star, Elena found herself back at the Intelligence Training Center, this time as an instructor for a specialized cultural analysis course. Looking out at the classroom, filled with analysts from across the intelligence community, she recognized the mixture of curiosity and skepticism in some of their expressions. "My name is Sergeant First Class Elena Rodriguez," she began. "Some of you have heard about me. Some of you have opinions about how I got here. I'm not concerned with either. What I am concerned with is preparing you for the operational realities of modern intelligence work, where traditional models often fail." She activated the tactical display, showing a complex urban environment. "This is where I learned that intelligence capability isn't just about technical analysis. It's about cultural awareness, adaptability, and understanding the complete spectrum of operational factors. Those are the qualities that determine success or failure in the field." As the course progressed, Elena's reputation grew. Analysts who had initially questioned her credentials became her strongest advocates. Her methodology, combining linguistic expertise with tactical intelligence, offered insights that traditional intelligence training often overlooked. After one particularly challenging exercise, Master Sergeant Williams, a veteran analyst with 12 years of experience, approached her. "You know, Rodriguez, when I heard a former translator was teaching advanced intelligence analysis, I had my doubts." "Most people did," Elena replied with a slight smile. "It worked to my advantage." "How so?" "Being underestimated meant I had to be better, more prepared, more knowledgeable, more adaptable. I couldn't just meet the standard, I had to exceed it consistently, so thoroughly that no one could question my place." Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Well, after watching you work, I'd say you didn't just earn your place. You redefined what that place could be." That evening, Elena received an unexpected visitor in her office. Colonel Patricia Hayes, her former regional commander from FOB Phoenix, entered with genuine warmth. "Sergeant First Class Rodriguez," Hayes said, "it's good to see you again." "You too, ma'am. What brings you to the Intelligence Center?" "Your course, actually. It's generating significant attention at the command level. Your integrated approach to intelligence operations is being considered for wider implementation." Elena gestured for the colonel to take a seat. "That's unexpected." "Is it? You've proven that combining linguistic expertise with tactical intelligence creates more effective analytical teams. The results speak for themselves." Hayes studied her for a moment. I also wanted to update you on some developments at Phobe Phoenix. Webb was reassigned to a training facility in Colorado. His leadership role has been significantly reduced. Elena nodded, feeling neither satisfaction nor regret. But that's not what I wanted to discuss, Hayes continued. I'm here to offer you a new position. She placed a folder on Elena's desk. Elena opened it and scanned its contents, her eyebrows rising with each page. Intelligence Division Director. That's typically reserved for officers with conventional career paths. Yes, it has been. That's precisely what we're changing, Hayes leaned forward. The position would place you in charge of a new cross-functional team, incorporating both intelligence analysts and cultural specialists. Your mission would be to develop and implement integrated intelligence operations in high-complexity environments. You're creating a whole new operational model, one based on your experience and success. The military is finally recognizing that the traditional separation between linguistic operations and intelligence analysis creates unnecessary vulnerabilities. We need integration, not division. Elena closed the folder, her mind racing with possibilities. When would this start? Immediately, if you accept. You'd have considerable latitude in selecting your team members and establishing operational protocols. That night, Elena found herself unable to sleep, the weight of the decision both exhilarating and daunting. She'd fought so hard to prove herself as an intelligence analyst, to demonstrate that she belonged in tactical operations. Now she was being asked to bridge the worlds of linguistic operations and intelligence analysis in ways that had never been attempted. Her phone chimed with a message, an update from Intelligence Task Force Viper. They'd completed another successful operation using the cultural integration methods she'd helped develop. Attached was a photo of the team, analysts and linguists. Together with a simple message, your model works. When are you coming back to lead us again? The answer crystallized in that moment. She would accept Hayes's offer, not to prove anything to anyone else, but because it was where she could make the most significant impact. The barriers she'd faced, the obstacles she'd overcome, they had prepared her to create pathways for others. 2 months later, Elena stood before her newly assembled Intelligence Division Echo, 30 specialists from across the military's analytical and linguistic divisions. Some were veterans with decades of experience. Others were promising talents who had faced their own battles against institutional bias. Our mission is unlike any you've trained for previously, Elena began. We're not just integrating linguistic operations with intelligence analysis. We're redefining how military intelligence adapts to complex cultural environments. Each of you was selected because you've demonstrated excellence that transcends traditional role boundaries. She activated the briefing screen displaying their first operational target, a region notorious for its challenging cultural dynamics and complex threat matrix. Conventional approaches have failed here repeatedly. Our approach will be different. We'll leverage the complete spectrum of your capabilities, creating analytical synergies that our adversaries won't anticipate or understand. Staff Sergeant Rebecca Walsh, a cultural specialist with unexpected analytical proficiency, raised her hand. Ma'am, how do we measure success in this new model? By mission accomplishment with maximum accuracy and minimum resource expenditure. By creating solutions that neither pure intelligence teams nor pure linguistic teams could develop independently. And ultimately, by proving that diversity of experience and expertise creates stronger analytical capabilities. The team deployed 3 weeks later. Their first mission, analyzing a communication network considered too complex for conventional intelligence methods, became a case study in the effectiveness of Elena's integrated approach. While traditional analysts had focused on either technical intercepts or cultural interpretation, Elena's team developed a hybrid solution that combined linguistic pattern analysis with cultural context assessment and strategic intelligence gathering. When unexpected resistance emerged during the operation, the team's diverse capabilities allowed them to pivot seamlessly between approaches, adapting in real time to changing conditions. The intelligence they gathered not only identified the primary targets, but uncovered an entire network that conventional methods would have missed. Upon their return, Intelligence Division Echo found senior military leadership waiting for their debrief. General Sarah Patterson, the Joint Intelligence Operations Commander, attended personally, an unprecedented level of attention for a new division's first mission. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, she said after their presentation concluded, "Your team has accomplished in one operation what 3 previous analytical teams failed to achieve in multiple attempts. It appears your integrated model has proven its value beyond any reasonable doubt." Elena nodded, accepting the praise professionally but directing attention to her team. "Ma'am, the credit belongs to these specialists who were willing to transcend traditional role limitations. They're the proof that our old models were unnecessarily restrictive." Patterson exchanged glances with Colonel Hayes. "We're convinced. Intelligence Division Echo is being elevated to permanent operational status with expanded resources and personnel. And you, Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, are being promoted to Master Sergeant, effective immediately." Over the next year, Intelligence Division Echo completed 23 high-priority missions across 4 continents. Their success rate was unprecedented, their adaptability becoming legendary within intelligence circles. Elena's integrated model was being studied and implemented by other units, fundamentally changing how the military approached complex analytical challenges. On a rare break between deployments, Elena found herself back at the Intelligence Center for a leadership conference. After her presentation on integrated analytical operations, she encountered a familiar face in the corridor. Master Sergeant O'Brien, her former ally from FOB Phoenix, greeted her warmly. "Elena, good to see you again. What brings you back here?" "Your reputation," he replied with a grin. "Half the intelligence community is talking about the analyst who transformed military intelligence methodology. Thought I should see for myself if the stories were true." "Probably exaggerated," Elena said. "Not according to General Patterson. She says your division has the highest success rate in military intelligence history." O'Brien studied her for a moment. "You look different, Elena. Not just the new rank. Different how? Comfortable, maybe. Like you finally found where you belong." Elena considered this. "Maybe it's because I'm not fighting to prove myself anymore. I'm just doing the work I was meant to do. That tends to happen when you're exactly where you should be." As they caught up, O'Brien shared news from FOB Phoenix. The cultural shift that had begun with Elena's departure had continued to evolve. More support personnel were pursuing intelligence qualifications. More intelligence leaders were recognizing the value of linguistic expertise. The artificial divisions that had once seemed so insurmountable were gradually dissolving. "You started something bigger than yourself," O'Brien observed. "People who never met you are following the path you cleared." That evening, Elena received an unexpected email from Lieutenant Colonel Webb. She almost deleted it unread, but curiosity prevailed. The message was brief but direct. "Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. My assessment of your capabilities was profoundly wrong. The model you've developed is revolutionizing our analytical approach. I was on the wrong side of history, and I'm trying to learn from that mistake. Congratulations on your success. It was earned through merit I failed to recognize." Elena sat with the message for a long time, considering its implications. The vindication wasn't necessary. Her success had already proven him wrong. But there was something powerful about the explicit acknowledgement, not because she needed his approval, but because it represented the institutional change she'd helped catalyze. The following day, Elena was summoned to a classified briefing at the Pentagon. The attendees included top military leadership and key figures from the intelligence community. The mission they outlined was potentially the most significant of her career, analyzing a global communication network with implications for national security. The situation is unprecedented, General Patterson explained. Our target operates across multiple cultural and linguistic boundaries. Conventional analytical methods have a projected success rate below 30%. We need Intelligence Division ECHO's integrated approach. Elena studied the intelligence briefing, her mind already formulating potential strategies. Ma'am, this would require capabilities beyond our current configuration. We'd need specialized expertise in several areas. You'll have whatever you need, Master Sergeant. Presidential authorization has been given for this operation. Full resources, full discretion. Over the next 96 hours, Elena assembled an expanded intelligence team that represented the ultimate expression of her integrated model. Analysts with linguistic experience, cultural specialists with technical qualifications, communications, experts with field experience. Each member selected not just for their primary skills, but for their ability to transcend traditional role boundaries. The analytical process reflected Elena's leadership philosophy: collaborative, adaptive, and comprehensive. Every team member contributed perspectives that shaped the final intelligence assessment. Our strength isn't just in our individual capabilities, Elena told them during the final briefing. It's in how we integrate those capabilities to create analytical solutions that no traditional team could develop. That's why we'll succeed where conventional approaches would fail. The operation launched from a secure facility using a multi-phased approach that combined elements of conventional intelligence gathering, advanced linguistic analysis, and cultural interpretation methods. As challenges emerged, the team adapted with the seamless flexibility that had become Intelligence Division ECHO's hallmark. When the analysis was successfully completed, providing critical intelligence that prevented a major security threat, Elena received direct communication from the highest levels of military command. The message was simple but profound. Your model saved lives today and quite possibly prevented a major intelligence failure. This is the future of military analysis. Standing in the secure communications room, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From being dismissed as just a translator to leading one of the most successful intelligence teams in military history. From fighting for recognition to reshaping the very definition of analytical effectiveness. She thought about the young translators and cultural specialists who were now following her path, about the intelligence leaders who were re-examining their assumptions about the institutional barriers that were gradually falling. Her personal victory had evolved into something far more significant, a fundamental shift in how military capability was defined and developed. Elena had spent 14 months learning to be invisible within the system. Now she was ready to demonstrate exactly what invisible people could accomplish when they finally stepped into roles where their capabilities could be fully utilized. The translator who was told she'd never be more than support staff hadn't just proven her critics wrong. She'd transformed the very system that once tried to limit her potential. Not by demanding recognition, but by demonstrating excellence that couldn't be denied. Not by fitting into existing structures, but by creating better ones. In intelligence centers around the world, her story was inspiring others to reach beyond artificial limitations, proving that true analytical strength comes in many forms. And that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't advanced technology or overwhelming resources. It's the courage to stand your ground when everyone tells you to accept less than what you're capable of achieving. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.